What are you expecting from the Bob interview?
Oh, you're doing this because the camera's on? I just had a chat for 20 minutes, maybe. I think Bob's going to be a good setup there. I was like, what are you on about? We've just been talking for a half hour.
Hey, Bob. You inside?
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Steve. How are you? Good seeing you.
Great to see you, too.
All right.
Congrats on the new position. It's awesome.
Yeah, not congrats yet, but I'm excited to get going.
It's good to have you. Good to have good man as a head.
Looking forward to it. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
What are we talking about today, by the way?
Parenting and youth sports. We talk soccer, we talk life, we talk
Hoops?
We talk hoops. We have a guy who's half decent at hoops.
Did you play basketball at all?
I did, yeah. I played basketball.
In high school?
He was on the Scottish national team.
Scottish national team.
Can you get to the corner, Bob, and then
Sure.
Stu, you come over and cuddle your former coach, if you don't mind?
Let me get to this, because your coaching career is legendary already.
Not legendary.
It is.
No.
In U.S. soccer circles, and just, your path is very unique, I think, from college to Major League Soccer to the Egyptian national team, which is one I love hearing you talk about, and then Premier League, Norwegian League, and then now you're back here in Major League Soccer in a completely different league. I mean, what drew you and said, this is the right opportunity for me?
The weather.
Yeah, the weather. No, I mean, look, if I were to kind of look at everything, the simplest way to speak is just that I've been able to coach at a lot of different levels. So, I mean, you mentioned college, but I've coached youth teams. I coached ODP. I coach youth national teams. So, whenever I speak to coaches, I think I can always look at them and say, I'm one of you. And so, I've appreciated different experiences. When I was finished with the national team with the United States, I felt like I needed some new challenges. That's always how you work. I mean, if I hadn't thought that way, I never would have left college soccer. But I've always kind of enjoyed the idea that to get better, you've got to put yourself into different situations and find out what that's like. And I had some discussions with MLS teams in the last 5 or 6 years, but I always said, I need to find something where I can take my ideas and my experiences and my vision and go somewhere where they kind of have the same. And I felt that this time around, so there's real potential.
We talk about it all the time. Like we both are part of the Mallorca ownership group. And
Right.
Yeah, do you need a job after this?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
We'll be heading back up to La Liga.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But with Mallorca, we have a rookie CEO, rookie sporting director, not a rookie coach, but a rookie academy director. And the thing that we keep framing to them are like core values. What are our core values?
Yes.
And if with every decision was framed through our core values, and then also, you can tell me everything you want about a player, but the final decision is on his mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a winner? Or does he point fingers?
Yeah.
Does he make excuses, or does he fight? Does he love to train? Is he a good teammate? Like,
Does he love the game?
Does he love the
I
game?
mean, I've coached guys sometimes and you come off the field and you're having some kind of debrief, and amongst the staff you're saying, I'm just not sure that guy loves to play football.
Yeah.
And at a certain point that gets in the way.
Yeah, I've seen him plenty of basketball players that are just gifted or tall.
Sure.
They're out there and you're like, not a chance he likes to play.
And they like the money.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is not something that they're that excited about.
Sure.
Well, one of the things we jumped into a training mostly because we wanted to play again when we were with Mallorca, but we played with the first team, then we trained with the reserve team the next day, and Steve and I, ultimate competitors, we hate to lose a game of ping pong. We were playing a scrimmage at the end of training. It's, 6-on-6?
Yeah, it was like 10 goalies.
We're about 3 or 4 games in, small-sided with goalkeepers, and the coach isn't keeping score. None of the players were keeping score other than Steve and I, and we looked around, and the coach was saying, okay, we're going to play a couple more games. We said, do you know what the score is? And the coach didn't know the score.
Right.
Steve and I said, it's 3-3. This next game, winner takes all. And the level was higher, and guys were challenging, and the intensity went up, and that was one of our big notes going back to that. And I remember from your training specifically, too, is that there was different way. You're not just competing in a full-sided game, but you're competing in different little scenarios.
Every touch,
every
inch of the field.
Yeah. You challenge people in different settings.
You create different situations in training that mirror the things you want to do well in the game. So, I mean, the old school idea that Liverpool, where you have your five-a-sides. There's something to be said about that, but I think the game has evolved a little bit, that the kind of situations that the best coaches create in training also go beyond five-a-side. Right. And so you're constantly trying to juggle your ideas, but make sure that the part of training being competitive, the tempo being good, guys competing, that those things still happen. So
how do you set that with a new team, a new group, players that you've known from the past, players that you've worked with in the past, but you also have new players, so figuring out that dynamic in the best way to challenge and leaning on guys that you recognized earlier, guys that are going to push that tempo and that are going to buy into what you're trying to create. When you're starting from a blank slate, essentially.
All I can speak to is my latest frame of mind, which I said to the guys at the beginning, that you need to show up every day with your personality. You need to show up knowing that I'm going to challenge you with football ideas to get better. You've got to open up your brain to the idea that this is what the game looks like. This is what the best teams do. This is what the best players do. And so we started from day one trying to establish some foundation for how we want to play.
Standards.
And yeah, standards and ideas and values and put it all together in a package. So, everybody's got their style. I tend to believe that you can have training that focuses a little more in one area, but there's still, I use this word package a lot, like there's a package of things that have to be there every day. So if we're working on some aspect of defending, we still better be good in the attack. Other than that, there's no real defending. And so somehow all these things go hand in hand, and if you don't work that way, then I don't see how you create something that in any way reflects what the game's about. If we're going to have a good team, the team has to have personality. And if we're going to have personality in the team, that actually means you have to be willing to come in here and show a little bit of yours.
So that's why I was picked.
Yeah, come on, Stuart. No, but even then, I mean, look, everybody says, what's Bob like? And they say, oh, he's intense. Look, I care. I think there's a right way to do things, but I yell, I hug, I scream, I joke. I try to be myself. I think everywhere I've gone, I've done that. Some people appreciate it, some don't. Some guys get my jokes, some don't. That's fine too. But I think that willingness to, in anything you do, in some form or fashion, you've got to be willing to put who you are on the table, right? And see if the guy who sits on the other side of the table eventually is willing to look you in the eye and put what he is all about on the table. And I've had some situations where some people just aren't up to it. They're afraid. They haven't done it before. And
they're limited because of that.
I think so. And so I believe this idea that if you want to get anywhere, you've got to be willing to go all in. I like that. And a lot of times people don't want to do it because if you go all in and it doesn't work, then you're exposed. And so they'd rather go in like halfway.
And the irony is, if you don't go all in, you'll never learn anything. You never risk anything. You never win anything. And I don't hear this one a lot, though, is the openness. Like coming into a situation and being open. I can't imagine what it's like to go into Egypt and coach a team because the culture is so different. You have to, they're probably looking at you at first like, what's this guy all about? Yeah. And if you don't say, hey, I'm here to get to know you. I want to understand you. I want to help you. They're going to never give you a chance.
But I'll tell you what I find interesting. I find it interesting that in some of these places, people there figured me out in some ways faster than people I've coached in the U.S. And I don't always understand that. But in Egypt, it was true of the players, and it's true in the country that at some point, if they sense that you're there and you care about them and their culture and
you respect them,
and they can see that, and then they appreciate that. And that was true across the board. I always talk first that in my house, my father made sure that we knew how to do things the right way, what was right and what was wrong. And then I've played for all kinds of coaches, and I could talk about coaches along the way that in some way you paid attention to how they did things in all sports, and then how that impacts a little bit of how you work. And then eventually, I've been fortunate that I have been around some football managers. And so sometimes I'll say that if I've spent some time with Sir Alex, and we're not great friends, but when you're with him, he treats you like a great friend. And if you went to Carrington, he knew everybody's name, and he had banter with everybody, and he'd be singing and he'd joke, but there wasn't one thing that went on in that club that he didn't know about. And I appreciated that he just came across like he had never forgotten where he came from. And the one thing that I believe in is that you can never allow yourself, and this is for a coach, player, whatever, you can never allow yourself to think you're bigger than the game. Right? When that happens, it's trouble. And I've seen football managers that are at huge clubs. I mean, look, I know Jose Mourinho a little bit. He's been nice to me. I don't know him great. I know the guys in his inner circle. I don't know how they talk to each other, and so I'm not part of that. I don't know them that well. But at a certain point, when he's at Real Madrid, and of course there's players that have their own media people to write certain things. There's a lot to deal with. But at a certain point, he kind of lost his way there. And for me, he lost it because it's almost like he thought he was bigger than Real Madrid. And in that moment, you actually need somebody on your staff who's your real friend to say, listen, Jose, you're a great manager, and I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for you, but you're not bigger than Real Madrid. And so somehow now we got to put our arms around this thing and try to get it going again. Sure. And so I appreciate the coaches or the managers in any sport that do that, but never, their ego, their way of doing things is not front and center.
Sure.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm similar. I think it says a lot about, a lot of times we're a mirror, right? Everything we say and everything that we're attracted to is a mirror of ourselves in a lot of ways. So when you I'm more attracted to somebody who's humble, you know what I mean? I respect and admire, and it's inspirational to see someone who's humble over, like, some people love the flamboyant, flashy, loud person, and just a difference of opinion. But I mean, Jose had a dig at me. I guess I had a slight dig at Jose one time. And, when they lost it. Do you know this one?
Yeah, I think you told me with Inter, right?
Inter, beat Barcelona on that two-legged Champions League. Was it a semi or was it a quarter?
I think it was the semifinal.
I think it was semifinal.
Yeah.
And I'd said Inter's lineup versus Barca, and I named like the best 11 keepers of all time. Mm-hmm. Just having a dig from my Inter friends, right? Sure. Just messing with them.
Yep.
But he took offense to it and was like, "You should stick to basketball." And I was like, "Oh, come on! I'm just having a."
It's because you knew you're a Spurs fan.
Yeah, maybe. Jeez. But anyways, yeah. I mean, I like Jose. I mean, I think sometimes he definitely.
He's an engaging guy.
I bet he's super charismatic. He's very bright. Yes, he's lost his way at times, and I'm sure we all do. But I think Jose's been great for the game. At his best, what was this guy like as a player? I know he's a cocky little prick, but what was he like at his best as a player?
No. Stuart, early on in the league, he played wide, and he could cross the ball, he could hit a good shot, he's a good-looking guy, and so
Jesus,
you had a guy that you thought had qualities, but maybe you weren't completely sold about whether it was sturdy enough in all the important ways. Yeah. That it was a little bit for show and a little bit flimsy. But then you get to know him, and you see there's a lot more there. And yes, I did have a good go at him one time because
I'll never forget it.
No, and you know what?
Yeah.
It's a good story because I said to him that, you're doing well in Houston now. You're kind of a big shot, and I'm worried that you think you're a big man in Houston, and that's getting in the way of where you're going, and that you're gonna F this thing up. And he said to me, I'm not gonna F it up because I've got this thing under control. I'm real. And
I remember the words you said. I don't think
I didn't say
you're taking your career, or I don't think you're taking the game right seriously enough.
Yeah.
I think is how you phrase it to me, and to which you and I have talked about this. It got heated in that room because it almost felt like
insulting.
And I know Bob was trying to. I know you were trying to press the right buttons, but it was almost of like seeing how I responded, and
it's true.
I came back.
Well, you
to
stood
that
up for yourself in a good way, and look, when we talked about it with other guys on the staff, I said it was a great conversation because as a coach, you're not always saying it like you've got all the answers, but you've picked up on something and you think it needs to be put there. So again, I mean, those are the kind of man-to-man discussions that you try to have, and ultimately, in some form or fashion, it's to make sure that player knows that you're in it together and that you're trying to help them, and that trying to help them doesn't always mean you tell them again all the positives, and it doesn't always mean that you just blow smoke. That sometimes you say, listen, what are you doing? So
yeah, and I think the perspective was important for me. Not that I agreed with everything that you had inferred in the way that I relayed that back to you, but also it allowed me to take a step back and think, well, maybe some of the things that I'm doing or portraying are coming off in a way that is not intended by me, but it's just a reflection of my personality. But how can I be better in that? And how can I, convince the guy next to me, if he maybe thinks it's like this, that it's not, and that I am going to fight, and that I am going to be there. So I think having that.
And then look, to finish the part on Stewart, I mean, obviously he grew, he went to England. Unfortunately, injuries got in the way. As we were getting close to the World Cup, I don't think physically you were 100%. We've had that conversation. But he was working hard every day, and more importantly, within our group, he had such a way of, he was positive, he was into it, and I think we did have a good group. And so, between you and Brad Guzan and Jay Demerit and others, I mean, we had to go back and forth. Depends what route they took us every day because of security, but it took us 20 to 30 minutes to get to training every day. And the songs from the back of the bus were creative. They were funny
song after this,
and it had a lot to do with a bunch of guys that you were proud to have them with you.
Communication and honesty, right?
Yeah.
You gotta, and what you did with Stu there is good coaching. Is you pushed a button and planted a seed. So he goes to training the next day, like, what am I missing here? What am I not doing? Why am I giving this off? And immediately you're going to be on edge. You're going to be trying to fight for every ball. You're going to try to portray yourself in a better light. So you've just given him that little bit of salt in the wound to get out there. And
hey, Bob, I've got a funny follow-up to that because that was in Denmark.
I was in Denmark.
I just finished full year with January camp, Dynamo, was trying to figure basically my life out, whether I was going to go to Bolton or it was Burnley. And so we played that game. I think we tied, did we tie them in the end 2-2? Jeff Cunningham scored in that game. It's irrelevant. That night, it was like one of those debates, like, well, Bob's just had this conversation with me about, am I serious? I also want to let off some steam. So headed to the local bar with a few of the boys, with Carlos and them, and it was a Tuesday night in Denmark. I think everything is shut, but one Irish bar. Next thing you know, I'm up on stage doing karaoke.
All right.
With a few of the boys.
Can't change the stripes.
U.S. fans.
Okay.
U.S. fans are in the bar. Someone films me doing karaoke in this bar.
The day after.
I get back to this day after this conversation with Bob, where I've looked him straight in the eye and said, I'm all in. I get back home to Houston. I go on Twitter, and there's my karaoke on YouTube, straight up. and my stomach dropped because I'm just anticipating this getting straight to Bob and him just going this.
My system works. I find those things out. But.
So I direct messaged the person that had posted the video, and I said, I'll send you a signed shirt if you take that video straight down. And to their credit, they took the video straight down. The signed shirt was there. I don't know if you ever saw the video. You probably would have laughed anyways.
But what matters is he cares.
Yeah.
You know, he has a strong enough personality to be himself, and in the end, he was strong enough to play at the highest level. Yeah. One thing I want to ask you that fascinates me is just human development, and so your son is captain now of the national team. I would say, you know, a captain and one of the best U.S. players of the last generation. How did you approach Micheal in sports? I think I know some of the answers to this, but I'd love to hear from you, kind of, you know, being a coach and having a son that made it all the way to the top. What can you share with us?
Well, the part that I would say is that he was around it from the time he was little. Yeah. And so, and it was just in a normal, natural way. It probably involves that around the house there's balls. And so, you know, in our house, for Micheal and for Kerry and Ryan, I mean, there were balls and there were bikes and there were bats and, you know, you participated with your kids.
I'm going to stop you right there because we have a million balls and bats, and my son Mateo doesn't give a shit about any of them.
Yeah, but
it really pisses me off, Bob. So I need more from you here. Okay,
well,
try that one.
No, we'll get to it. I mean, look. So
I'm kidding.
Anyway, but you know, then I when he's a little kid,
environment. Yeah.
But again, like when people talk about all this is kind of in the last period what drives me crazy. All right. You know, I'm coaching at Princeton University. In Princeton, I said this on one of these shows recently, there's a Hispanic part of town. And, you know, I made it my business to get to know kids in that part of town. And look, I also knew good youth players from the area that weren't Hispanic. And it was a different era where liability and whatnot wasn't the same way.
Yep.
And so we would set up sometimes training sessions. And the parents were funny. They would come and say, is this a tryout? I would go, no.
Just playing.
And is this, is this, what is it? And I go, no, we're just going to play. They'd look at me like I was crazy, right? But what would happen is these kids were probably 12, 13, and I don't know, Michael's 4 or 5, but I would get there early, and, you know, I had big street cones from the highway. Probably somebody stole them, and you know, but they made for good goals, right? And so you'd get there and you'd make 2 goals, and it would be me and Micheal. So what happens when it's 2 people? It's one-on-one. And you know, when he's real little, in some ways, you know, how much do you let him get away with certain things? You know, but anyway. Yeah. And now 2 kids would show up. And so immediately you say, okay, listen, you and I will play against those 2. And then 2 more. And then, you know, it would always be interesting if he's real little and all of a sudden, like when it's just 2 of us, if I have the ball, I can do one of 2 things. I can either do something myself or I can give it to him. And if I do something myself, he's pissed off because he wants you to give it to him. Then if there's 3 kids, one, Micheal, me, and 1 more, every now and then I got to give it, you know, I give it to the other kid. And now, you know, he starts to learn that is kind of how it works. Yeah. So you have enough days where he's just around the game with, you know, thrown into situations. I mean, when he was a little older and we were in Chicago and he would hang around training, at the end of training, if these guys were having little games, they would sometimes include him. And, you know, I would say to him, listen, here's the deal. If you hang around training and you're a little shit and you act like you're entitled, then I promise you they're not letting you play in any games. Okay? But if you hang around training and, you know, you chase balls and whatever, you pick up or you even as a 9-year-old, if you kind of act the right way, every now and then, if you get a chance to play, then guess what? Maybe they'll take you a little bit seriously. And it's the same way then in that game. If he gets the ball and he tries something stupid and he starts to try to dribble and whatnot, then
you're not going to get it.
Then most likely he's going to lose it, and they're going to say, "What are you doing?" So, when you talk about development, I sometimes at coaching courses I try to, there's always this bit of saying, like, are you someone as a young player who's very good at doing things on your own, but you don't know how to play with others, right? Or are you somebody who, you're not great at doing it on your own, but somehow you have a sense of how to play with the other guys on your team? And you can only imagine that the little Messi probably was really good at doing stuff on his own, and somewhere along the line he had to figure out the rest. And the little Xavi probably, and I think if I were looking at basketball, probably Steve, at some point you were young, but you were pretty good at knowing how to play with the guys around you. And I could probably think of, maybe Allen Iverson at first was pretty damn good at doing things on his own. Yeah. And somehow so I think he was around it in different ways, and he realized that no matter who I was, he had to earn respect for himself, and you could tell he loved it.
But he, this is an interesting one. So you set an environment, you created values and a standard that he had to live up to, self-respect and respecting his teammates. But I look at Micheal as an extremely driven, if not obsessed soccer player, which is what you need. I mean,
and he loves the game. He wants to get better. So
my question is how much of that is innate versus how much of that was a part of his environment clashing with?
That's true. It's some combination of both. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Because it's interesting. I look at myself in a similar way to Micheal. I mean, very similar. My dad set an environment. We're always in the backyard playing, but I mean, I must have been innate in a lot of ways. I mean, my brother played for Canada soccer 35 times. Right? He was a very natural, talented kid. Never wanted to practice. For playing, he'll go play. Yeah. Never, ever wanted to practice. So we had the same environment, same father, everything the same. He ended up going a long way just because he was talented. Right. But he never played in the Premier League because he never worked a day in his life outside of training.
No, that's interesting. But I find it interesting now in these discussions because obviously in the United States, and if you look across the country, soccer has a reputation as being an upper middle class sport, and I mean I understand it, but I still somehow we just have to make sure that there are real opportunities for all these kids, right? Yeah. And you can have this wealthy, affluent town that has an ability to go out and hire a coaching director. And if they hire some idiot, that guy hires a bunch of crappy coaches, then that town's not going to be very good. And so, lately I'll throw in my friend Manfred Chelshite, and, that was Union, New Jersey. And so if you lived near Union and somehow you ended up on fields where he was involved coaching, then the way you played would be different than the kid who lived in the next town who played in a different program. And so there are people along the way. Yeah. And so this concept of how passion develops, how talent is identified, it still runs across. You want to make sure that everybody has opportunities, but there's no... It's not an exact science.
You never will. No one's ever going to have the same.
And so,
just try to do the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, I've given Kyle Martino a hard time when he makes it seem like the problem is that all around the world, football is dominated by kids that come from nothing, and we have too many rich kids playing. And look, in theory, I kind of understand that, but in 2010 in the World Cup, I'm not sure we had a bunch of rich kids on our roster. Okay, I don't know if anybody came from nothing, but having said that, I don't think anybody was really top of the top. And if you look at backgrounds of family backgrounds, you know, Josie's, Gooch's, Johnny Bornstein's, yours, Charlie Davies. You know, I mean, it's all. Some guys who were lucky that the mother and father were around. Some parents were split up. I mean, look, this is the world we live in, and so I if I look around football these days, yeah, I know there would be some incredible stories. I mean, Players Tribune. At one point, there was a very good article. Jesus, the striker from
Gabriel De Jesus, training in the prison
Gabriel,
and all that.
Yeah, so that's a great story, right? But you know, I don't think everybody that's on the German national team and everybody on the Spanish national team. And I said to Kyle one day, I don't think everybody on the Golden State Warriors came from nothing, Kyle.
I'll name one who didn't.
Well, exactly right.
Right.
So I mean, we've kind of lost our way in terms of. These are not real conversations. I mean,
you be coaching the team then?
I don't think so. But I'll be coaching somewhere, Stuart.
I know that. I don't doubt that.
There might be a bunch
Mallorca
of,
on the beach.
or it might be a bunch of kids somewhere. But you know, I still enjoy that part.
Yeah. You good?
Yeah.
Well,
That's great.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Good
Two
luck
Dads
with
United.
all of that.
You're gonna be famous after this.
Be famous on my Facebook page.
Good discussion.
Good to see you again, Coach.
All interesting. Steve,
Really
thank you very much.
Thank you.